Hey guys, it's Lauren. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a more casual, sit-down, chatty video. We are talking about every single Colourpop eyeshadow palette launch this year. And I kind of misspoke a little bit because it's not every single launch, solely because, you know, it is only December. It's like the very beginning of December. And based off, you know, the amount of eyeshadow palettes that Colourpop comes out with every single month in the past, I mean, you guys don't even have to watch this video to know that. They are known for constantly pushing out new palettes. So I have a feeling that between now and the end of the year, they're going to come out with at least 2 or 3 more. So just know those are most likely coming. I just can't really predict the future and know what they're going to look like. But I did get all the information today that I'm sharing from 2 Instagram accounts, Colourpop Cold and A Trend Mood. I'll have both of their accounts linked down below if you want to check them out. And then also Colourpop's Instagram account was a great source for like finding out the dates of when each of these palettes launched and, you know, just compiling my thoughts on it all. In this video, and I'll have Colourpop's, you know, Instagram and website and all of that good stuff linked down below. But this video is not meant to bash Colourpop in any way. It's more so just to kind of look at, you know, just a total like overview of every single palette they've come out with this year, kind of my thoughts on it and how frequent it was. And, you know, look at, you know, if you were to purchase all of these palettes, how much would you have spent? How many palettes in total were launched? This isn't going to include the build your own palettes just because they came out with so many of those, and this list, like, believe me, I made notes with me and it is long already, and I can't even imagine how long it would be if I had all of those build your own palettes in here. And this video isn't meant, like I said, to, you know, bash Colourpop. I don't really want to talk about like the kind of crazy influx of makeup launches that we've been seeing in this video. However, I do want to do that in the future, so if you guys want to see it, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, let me know your thoughts on this entire topic. I know sometimes when I'm watching specifically commentary, you know, type videos, I'll see that, you know, I have all of these ideas, but I don't want to leave, you know, a super long comment, or I'll try and wait to the end so I'm not constantly commenting. I mean, I really don't care, you guys. I love hearing everything you have to say, so if you have to leave 100 comments in order to, you know, share all of your thoughts on this, that's totally fine, because me and my scatterbrain, you know, I'm there with you. But I'm really just going to be commenting on everything, just sharing my thoughts. I hope that I did not miss any of, you know, the palettes that have come out, just because I was having to like literally go back, scroll through their Instagrams all the way back to January. So you can imagine that is a lot of posts. So hopefully I didn't miss one. If I did, please just correct me down below. But let's go ahead and get into this video because I do have a lot to share, and I feel like this intro has already been way too long. So Colourpop actually waited until January 17th to come out with their first palette of the year, which was one of their like 9 PM monochromatic palettes. And this palette is the It's My Pleasure palette, and this is like their real purpley tone palette, and all of these monochromatic 9 PM palettes retail for $12, and these are not going away. I mean, I'm sure you guys have noticed throughout the year they have come out with an absorbent amount of these specific eyeshadow palettes, and this whole kind of trend began, I believe, in October of 2018 with the Ooh La La palette, and that was like their pinkier tone palette. And I mean, for real, that just kicked off an entire range of these palettes, and you know, you'll see a ton more throughout this video, but those aren't going away anytime soon. I would say they're probably half of the eyeshadow palettes that I'm mentioning. But the next palette, they waited until February 27th. So another thing I kind of noticed as I've been, you know, compiling this data was, wow, like at the beginning of the year, they were not coming out with that much. I would say, you know, pretty sporadic considering, like, compared to other brands and everything. Like, this is over a month later, their next palette, and this is the Brunch Date palette. And this was a collab with, I believe, Zoella. And I like the colors in this palette. I like the neutrals. I like the pops of color in there. They're a little bit different, and I feel like I could actually create a lot of looks with this. But honestly, I just wasn't that, I don't want to say I wasn't that impressed, but it just didn't seem like anything I had to have, especially because I believe it was like $22, which for me, I feel like I could get a palette from a brand that like I truly love. Like I could get two, like, for the cost, like for double that, I could get the palette, you know, from Too Faced or whatever that I've been wanting more, rather than just kind of impulse buying this. So I kind of like have thought about that throughout my purchases, and even here, it's like, okay, if I were to just save up double this amount, what else could I get? And that's something, another like theme you'll see throughout this video, just because all of these palettes are, you know, relatively affordable, especially in comparison to other higher end products that are getting a lot of hype. It makes it seem really easy to purchase one of these products. But the next one is the Just My Luck palette. This is another monochromatic palette. It's a 9 PM palette. This retails for $12, and this is the green one. So timed really great. It was launched on March 6th, and I want to say for 2 reasons that it's timed really well. One, because obviously March does have St. Patrick's Day in it, so it's not like, you know, that's the only reason it's timed really well. Like, it doesn't take, you know, a rocket scientist to figure out, oh, a green palette in March, that would sell probably pretty well. But at this time, there was a ton of, like, hype around the color green. Like, I feel like I've saw so many people using green in their eyeshadow kind of near the end of February and going into March. And I don't know how they do it. I know that they have their own lab, but I feel like that's another thing. Like, you constantly see Colourpop just on top of trends. They're just constantly on whatever trend there is because they come out with so much. I don't know if some of it's like coincidence, but I feel like a lot of it is them, you know, planning, studying, and figuring out, hey, people are into this right now. If we come out with a palette like that that's relatively affordable, people are going to buy it. So the next palette launched as a part of their spring collection, and this palette retails for $18. It is the Sweet Talk palette. This palette is just really a pinkier tone palette. It's really pretty, and I was very intrigued by that, and honestly, the entire collection as a whole. I did end up picking up one of the lipsticks from that spring collection and really enjoyed it, but I never did end up picking up that palette. And honestly, I didn't need it. I have so many pink tone palettes. I mean, look at my eyes today. Like, I love pink tones. But the next launch was actually just a week later on March 21st, and this was a collaboration with Disney. And it was like one of their Disney Villains palettes, and this is the Misunderstood palette, and it retails for $22. I really enjoy palettes that I feel like tie in with their theme. Like, it's not like they just have this outer packaging that has nothing to do with the shades on the inside. And they did a great job kind of like coordinating the two, the theme and the actual shades in the palette. Not only with the shades, which I thought really related to the villains that they were kind of like advertising with this palette, but also kind of like the formula that they chose for each of the shades. Like, I felt like whether it was metallic or glittery or matte, whatever it was, I felt like it really just intensified kind of the correlation between that theme and the shades. I just really enjoyed that. I never ended up picking it up just because I don't wear, obviously, very vampy shades in my eyes. Didn't think I would enjoy it, and I probably wouldn't have. But the next launch was on April 26th, so almost over a whole month later. And this is their collaboration with Makeup Shayla. It was a part of a whole collection called the Under Construction collection, and this palette is the Proceed with Caution palette. It's a $12 palette. I believe it has 9 shades. I really liked the outer packaging of this collection. It had like this like caution tape on it. It was really cool. I saw a lot of people do reviews on it. It got pretty good reviews, but honestly, I just wasn't that intrigued by it. I don't love the shades in the palette, or I just wasn't intrigued by the collection as a whole. So the next palette launch was on May 16th, and this is another one of their Monochromatic palettes. It is a 9-pan palette that retails for $12, and it is the Main Squeeze palette. This palette is kind of like watermelon themed. It had some reds in there, some pinks in there. I don't know if I necessarily thought this to be like, I don't know, a monochromatic palette. I know that's what they were advertising it as. I feel like you can create more multi-dimensional looks with this palette, like according to the colors. Like, I feel like you can create a wider variety of looks just solely than like a red tone look or a pink tone look. Like, it's a little more, you have a little more variety in there rather than like the green palette, which you have greens. So I don't know if I really agree with that label, but it did look like a great palette, and I like how, you know, the timing of this, I really associate, you know, watermelons with the summertime, so I like the timing of it. The next launch was another monochromatic palette. It is the like blue palette. It's the Blue Moon palette, and this retails for $12. This came out on May 23rd, and I gotta say, I mean, blues were very popular at that point, especially after Jeffree Star had just came out with the Blue Blood palette. Blues were a popular thing, and I think this was timing was really well, because this is kind of like an affordable alternative to that Blue Blood palette. And personally, I did like the Blue Blood palette. I never did try it, but I like the color scheme of it. I will say though, whenever it comes to monochromatic looks, I like a palette that would have, you know, all that shade. I don't necessarily need like a transition shade, and so I like that this was more of just blues, and it kind of took out, you know, the other shades, and it's more affordable, so it's kind of just an alternative. I wouldn't say it's a direct competitor though, even though I know a lot of people did think that. The next palette was the California Love palette, and this retails for $18. It came out on June 20th, and this was something I just didn't love. I don't know why. I remember seeing Samantha March do a review on it, and I was kind of a little more intrigued after I saw that. But honestly, this palette just did not call my name. So the next palette launch was just a week later on the 27th of June, and this was the Honey Monochromatic palette, and it retails for $12, just like all of the others. Again, I think the timing of this was pretty good, to be honest. I feel like, again, I don't think it necessarily takes a rocket scientist to figure out that you could come out with a yellow palette during the summer or the spring, and it would probably sell pretty well. But I will say, you know, I think that yellow was particularly very popular at that point. I would see a lot of people doing yellow tone looks, and I feel like the reason, the kind of palette that kicked that off, although it wasn't necessarily like a yellow monochromatic palette, it did have yellow packaging, and it was a collaboration with Tarte with an influencer that I can't remember the name. I really can't. It's the, you know, that girl who loves yellow. I'll put her name here on the screen, but that palette I feel like really did kick off kind of this whole yellow trend. I remember seeing a few indie brands do yellow tone palettes, and this is a palette that they did. I think they did well. They, you know, hopped on that trend. Then the next palette was launched a little less than a month later on July 24th, and this is the Orange Glad palette. Again, another orange monochromatic palette. It retails for $12, just like all of the others. Then again, on August 1st, they have the Strawberry Shake palette, which this palette, I believe I mentioned when I did a new makeup release video and I mentioned this palette really intrigued me. Like, at that point, that was the one that had intrigued me the most out of all of the other, like, monochromatic palettes that had come out with. It was, again, you guys know I love the pinkier shades. And this kind of had, again, kind of similar to the main Squeeze palette, where there's kind of a variety of shades in there. Like, it's not just, you know, all pinks. Like, it has kind of a variety. You can do a more multi-dimensional look. Again, don't know if it's monochromatic, but you can. And that was something that really intrigued me about this palette. I didn't end up picking it up. I wish I did, though. This, again, was another kind of sketchy timing palette just because Manny MUA, the Lunar Beauty brand, they had just come out with their Strawberry Dreams palette, which was very, very similar to this, although it did have a more broad color scheme. Like, you would see some blues in that palette, and this is pretty, you know, basic. But again, I think one of the reasons that I was so drawn to this palette, like I mentioned, is because I do love pink. So this one really did intrigue me. There's one more that intrigued me more, and I'll mention that near the end of the video. I bet you guys can guess what it is. But yes, the next palette, I mean, it's another monochromatic palette. It is the Baby Got Peach palette, $12. It was launched on August 22nd. So the next launch was on August 31st, and they came out with an ultra exclusive palette called the Truly Madly Deeply palette, which retails for $23. And I actually have a giveaway on my channel right now that includes this palette along with a few other things. If you want to check out that giveaway for the holidays and you haven't already, I will have it linked in the cards up there and in the description box down below. But enough, that's just like little self promo. But I was very intrigued by that palette initially when I saw it. So of course I wanted to throw it in the giveaway because, again, like I've mentioned multiple times, pinks they're beautiful, and I was very intrigued by that one. The very next day, on September 1st, they came out with another ultra exclusive palette, and this palette is the X's and O's palette, and it is $16. It's very similar, and I saw so many other people pointing this out, but it's very similar to the Femme Rosa She palette. And I mean, like, really, like, I was like, are they just coming out with it for Ulta? Like, what is this? Like, haven't they come out with this before? And it's a brand new palette. It's a little bit vampier in tone than the shades in the Femme Rosa palette, but again, it's still eerily similar. On September 6th, they came out with their next palette, and it was a collaboration with Kathleenlights that retails for $39, which when I saw, I was like, that is pretty pricey. And, you know, you are getting a lot of shades in that palette. They look like very pretty shades. They look like, you know, shades that you don't see that often in combination with each other. And I would have purchased it, but I am being, you know, more cautious with, I don't know, I'm just being more mindful of the palettes that I'm taking into my collection because I realize I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes, and I don't use eyeshadow all that often. I really don't use it very often, especially all of those palettes. Like, if I'm going to use eyeshadow, I have my favorite ones, and I very rarely, it's sad, but I very rarely reach for the other ones. And so I just have to be, you know, mindful of what I'm bringing into my collection, and that was something I was just like, I don't really need it. But as far as the price goes, I think that Colourpop as a brand and, you know, a company that's trying to make money, I would say that they need to be careful. If you're going to be coming out with constantly so many products and you want people to continue purchasing all of those products that you're launching, you should probably keep your prices a little bit lower. And this is just an advice for any company that wants to come out with so much. People are not as willing to just drop $40 on an eyeshadow palette just every single week. Like, I feel like that's not really something obtainable for most people. So, I mean, that's just something I'd be thinking about Colourpop. But the next launch was on September 12th, and this is a palette called the Whatever palette, and it retails for $18. I remember soon after, or right before this palette came out, I was watching a podcast, the Half Cousin podcast, and Georgia Harris is one of, like, I don't want to say the host, but one of the people on the podcast, and she was describing this palette, and she was like, she didn't even know the name of it, and she was just like, this palette just looks so, like, bland to me. Like, what is it? Like, whatever palette this is. And she was like, it's the Whatever palette. Like, it's just kind of a perfect way to describe this, you know, this phase in particular. I feel like fall, Colourpop was constantly launching something new. Like, every single day I felt like there was a new eyeshadow palette, and realistically that's not necessarily true, but when you're constantly coming out with so many eyeshadow palettes, some of them do just kind of, I don't know, they get ignored, they get looked over, and I feel like this is one of those palettes. I mean, if you guys knew that this palette came out, like, then great, but I feel like the average consumer, even someone who loves makeup and just isn't as, you know, crazy about it as you or I are, would be like, what is that? Like, when did that come out? It just feel like, I don't know, it just gets looked over. But the next palette was, you guessed it, another monochromatic palette. It is the Lilac You a Lot palette, and this is another one of those that retails for $12. This one really intrigued me. Like, it was like, for me personally, because I do like purples, I just didn't love how, not even vampy, but like how vibrant the purples were in the It's My Pleasure palette, just because you know, I'm in school, I have a job, like I can't necessarily wear super bright purples to work or school. Like I could to school, but again, I just don't. I like something a little bit more toned down, and this is something I feel like I could get away with just because they are purples, but they're just a lot more muted, and I really did like it. I feel like it's not identical to the, you know, It's My Pleasure palette, but I will say this. I feel like it's a little too similar to come out with this palette so soon after. I mean, when you think about this is 6 months later, a little over 6 months later, and it just doesn't seem that different to, you know, constitute having a whole new palette. Next up, we have another collaboration with Disney, and I'm not trying to hate on Colourpop or anything, but I will say, what is this? Like 3 Colourpop Disney collaborations? Like, I just don't really understand how many you could possibly need. I mean, I'm not necessarily complaining because they do seem different, and this one honestly was the most intriguing out of all of them in my opinion, just for me and the shades that I know I like. But again, I just don't know if it's something you necessarily need to add to your line, a third collection with Disney. But this is the Midnight Masquerade palette, which retails for $22, and this launched, I don't know if I said it already, but it came out on October 7th, and you know, I like this palette, but again, I just don't know how necessary it was. Then we have another monochromatic palette. This one was pretty interesting though. I wasn't expecting them to come out with one like this, and this is the Smoke Show palette, which again retails for $12. It came out on October 10th, and this again was another very on-trend palette. I feel like at that point a ton of people were just loving the gray tone looks, and myself included. Like, I've really been into grays lately. I mean, realistically, this is like 2 months ago, and I still am into the grays, but I don't know. I just wasn't that drawn to this palette in particular. Again, I like more muted shades than this, but I did think this launch was very unique, and I appreciated this monochromatic palette. So the next launch was on October 18th, and this is the Bye Bye Birdie palette. It retails for $18. This definitely looks like something we've seen before. It's another one of those palettes that it's like, it looks so similar. This is when I couldn't, you know, put like my finger on what specific palette I'm, you know, referring to, but I definitely know I've seen something like this from this brand. I feel like it's just very repetitive at this point. Nonetheless, I do really I liked this color scheme, and I believe I contemplated purchasing it. So then on October 20th, they came out with 3 eyeshadow palettes, and this was the Night Owl palette, the Lovebird palette, and the Birds of Paradise palette. And all of these retail for $12. So I remember looking at these, and I was intrigued by one of the other two, not the Night Owl, but either the Lovebird or the Birds of Paradise, and I don't remember which one it was, but now I can't find like any links for it, and I can't find that it's available online, so I don't remember which one was kind of like up my alley in color scheme, but these were here for like a hot second. The only one I can find now is the Night Owl palette, and I'll have it linked down below, but it's the only one to my knowledge that's still available. The next launch, I don't remember hearing anyone talk about it. This was like not on my radar whatsoever. It is a collaboration with Pony's Makeup, and is the Biddy Candy Button palette. Retails for $15. It came out on the 7th. This palette, I don't know guys. Like, it's kind of the interesting, like the layout, it's this pink palette, like the actual packaging of it, and then like the component, and then on the inside it has these like pinky shades, but then it also has some brownish looking shades. They could be duochromes that just kind of look weird with like the flash photography, but it's just the color scheme out looks really, really weird. So yes, then after that, on November 13th, they came out with another monochromatic palette. This one, though, really, really intrigued me. It is the Going Coconuts palette, and it retails for $12, just like all the others. This one really intrigued me because I just love neutral shades. Like, the girl that loves neutrals is gonna love this palette. I mean, I definitely thought about purchasing it, but again, I have to think about like, what I'm bringing into my collection, like, you know. But out of all the palettes, all of the monochromatic palettes that I've seen in 2019, this one definitely intrigued me the most. One thing I will say though is I remember hearing like all of the internet talk about it, and I think part of that was just kind of them strategically placing this. I don't know if it's the end of their monochromatic palettes, because they do have, I believe, 1 or 2 more after this, maybe. But I feel like they kind of placed this near the end or at this point because they've already come out with so many palettes and you're like, maybe I'm done with color. Like, maybe I've had enough of color. Like, I want to go back to the neutrals. And again, you know, this time of year when you are wearing typically bolder lips, like, it's just good timing. And that is something, if I learned anything from all of this, like, looking at Colourpop's launches, like, I realized Colourpop does well. So next, we have a collaboration that I believe so many people were really excited about. It is the Anna and Elsa palettes, and they retail for $15 each. This came out, or like these two palettes came out on November 15th, and I don't know, neither color scheme was that appealing to me. I could see how you could relate it to those princesses, like I get it. But again, unless you were like a Frozen fanatic, I don't really see the appeal to it. But again, that could totally just be me. Maybe these are some shades that are totally up your alley. The next launch was on November 21st. And this is the Flutterby palette. So they came out with a ton of butterfly palettes. You just wait. They're coming. But this was kind of a cool tone palette. It's $18. It has like some cool tone mauve neutral shades. It did really intrigue me. As someone who really enjoys those cool tone shades, like this was definitely, out of a lot of the palettes we've seen, like this is another one that is up my alley. And then we have another one that really you would think would be targeting me, but I don't know. I didn't love it. Anyway, this came out on November 28th. It came out on Thanksgiving Day, which I thought was a little odd. It is the Bare Essentials palette, and this is a $30 eyeshadow palette, which honestly, I think for this one, it does constitute the price because there are 30 different shades in there. I feel like $1 per shade, pretty reasonable. Especially considering it's a neutral palette, something that I feel like a lot of people would get use out of, and they're very wearable shades. But for me, I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna be my new palette. And I saw so many influencers being like, this is the perfect neutral palette. And you guys know, I love the neutrals. So of course I did take a second and look at it and like, that looks like something I'd enjoy. But to be completely honest, I was like, I only like half the shades. Like, it just wouldn't be worth it for me. There's so many shades in here that I just don't, I think I already have, or I just don't think I need. So on November 29th, like I mentioned, there was more butterflies coming. On November 29th, they come out with 3 $18 eyeshadow palettes. And the names of them are A Flutter, Butter Me Up, and Gimme Butterflies. And honestly, they do look really pretty. Like, if I'm just being perfectly honest here. They are Ulta exclusives, but again, it's just like they all look done before. Like, they just look very bland. And then the last palette so far that has come out, I don't know if there'll be more. Like I said, there probably will be. But this is the Good as Gold palette. And again, this time of year, perfect for coming out with a gold palette. I mean, gold, silvers, reds, like anything like that, people are going to want for holiday parties and just holidays in general. This palette retails for $18 and it came out on the 2nd. So I kind of wanted to wrap this video up kind of with just a few things that I figured out. One is the total number of palettes that they came out with this year, not including those build your own palettes, just solely all of the palettes that they kind of came up with themselves. It's 34 palettes, and I know at the beginning of this video or at the beginning of like my research when I'm sitting there writing down all the different palettes, I'm like, I don't know if they really come out with that much. Like, I know everyone has this kind of thought about Colourpop constantly coming out with new palettes, but is that really true? And by the end I was like, yes, that is really true. 34 palettes is a lot, and I figured out the total. I mean, I could be wrong, I'm not the best at math, but if I did my math correctly, if you were to purchase all 34 of those palettes, you would be spending $533. And I find these videos interesting just because, like, whenever you like really look at a makeup brand or just makeup in general and kind of think more about it than just, you know, the surface level, I feel like it's like, wow, like $533, like when you're looking at those palettes and you see like a $12 palette and you purchase that and an $18 palette, like, you know, separately, it doesn't look like a big deal. But when you think about it all together, that's like a lot of money that like you could spend elsewhere. And I'm not, you know, if you want to spend that much money and you're able to spend that much money, then you go for it. Like, if that's what you want to spend your money and it makes you happy, like, definitely I don't want you guys to think that I'm not saying like, you know, whatever, I'm all for the love of makeup. Like, you know, you should do what you love. You're only here once. But for me personally, there are other things that I would rather spend $500 on. I mean, I don't know. This was very interesting to me, kind of like a realization of, whoa, like it is not just this tiny number, like altogether it's a lot. So that's kind of like my, I don't know, consensus on this entire thing. I don't know if it was very interesting. I feel like I was just sitting here listing, like, you know, all the palettes of the year. But if you guys liked my opinion and just kind of like my stance on all of this, then let me know in the by giving this video a thumbs up and in the comment section down below, because I want to know if I should do more videos like this, because if you enjoy it, I definitely will. If you're new here and you haven't already subscribed, please be sure and do so by clicking that red button down below and the notification bell. I do have a giveaway going on my channel. That's one of the things you have to do to enter is subscribe. So one step already done. And like I said, if you want to check it out, I'll have it linked down below. And thank you guys so much for watching. I like to always say that at the end of all of my videos, just because, I mean, it would feel kind of weird to just sit here and like talk to a camera knowing like no one's ever gonna watch it. Like, it just feels kind of weird. So thank you guys so much for all your support. It really just means so much to me because I really love doing this, and I am really tired at this point. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm like, I need to go to bed. Like, it has been a long day. So I hope that you guys had a great day today. I hope that you have a great couple of days until, you know, my next video goes live, and I will see you then. Bye.